we don't know what this means, locker room chat. What do you guys talk about in the locker room?
Probably usually about girls, if I'm being pretty honest.
Chats based on women and sexual talk, and how detailed as guys do you go?
I feel like guys go into just as much, if not more detail than girls. I really do. Yeah. If it's your girlfriend, you don't want the guys you're with imagining your girlfriend in those
there's stuff that has to stay private.
compromising those situations. And you don't want them to, like, next time you're out at like a date or something, and for them to look across the table and imagine all the stuff you were saying or whatever. So you don't want to do that. But yeah, if it's something a bit more casual.
I was just watching how men are with each other, having cheap jokes at each other's expense. I don't think they understand it really does hurt that person.
It is a male bonding technique.
Okay.
It's a way of saying, I feel comfortable with you enough that I can make a joke with you and you won't get like scared or butthurt.
What do you guys think for 20-year-old guys? Do you feel like the conversation has changed in terms of vision and what people want to do with their lives versus maybe people who are 10, 20 years older than you?
Yeah.
I feel like it's definitely changed. The conversation has definitely changed.
What do you think?
I think the conversation that I'm having now with friends is very different, and it's more around where they actually want their life to go and how they're trying to get there.
The biggest mistake I made in my early 20s was doing too many things at once.
And they don't realise when you're being serious or when you're just having fun and laugh with them, when you know that line that you just don't overstep the mark. Because some women will be on the same wavelength as you and you will be able to banter with you, and some will just be like, I can't believe you just said that.
Some of them, in my experience, and this is in my experience, generally speaking, I can't believe I'm about to say this. There you go.
Hello, I'm Dr. Nita Ratan.
And I'm Anisha Vasani.
Welcome to Taboo Table Talks, where we're uncovering controversial topics in a modern world.
It's time to change conversations and question the status quo. We have got the amazing duo, fellow podcasters from the ground floor, Ollie and James. Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Welcome.
So lovely to have you here, and it's so
thank
nice
you.
to have two people, fellow podcasters, and we're going to be like, well, we're not going to roast
We
you.
have
I was going to say, we'll see where it goes, shall we? Yeah, let's see where it goes.
Lots of things to debate.
Yeah.
We've been told
Good.
lots of things we're not allowed to talk about now. Just kidding.
So where should we start?
Where do we start? We were discussing this, and I think we want to start with locker room chat, if you don't mind. So we don't know what this means, locker room chat, because I think for females, we have very different locker room chat to what guys have, and we are not privy to what you guys talk about. So what do you guys talk about in the locker room?
I think first of all, I don't play sports anymore. So
neither of us are sportsmen.
Yeah.
So
I think
I don't go to the locker room. Is that what you're trying to say?
I think when you say locker room talk, I'm guessing you mean when men are kind of alone in a space that's kind of like for men only, and what do they talk about? And I think it depends on age. I think is a very big part of it, and I think culture is probably a big part of it. I think if you get a few software engineers together in a room, and then you get a bunch of rugby players who have had a drink in a room, you're probably going to get two very different conversations. But I think in general, it's things that they would probably just feel maybe a bit uncomfortable to talk about in person. Probably usually about girls, if I'm being pretty honest, and things that would probably, they wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable talking about in public, I would guess.
I think it also depends on what time or stage of their life they're at as well.
For sure, yeah.
Definitely. I feel like if you've got 18-year-olds sat together talking about things, it's likely going to be very different to 28-year-olds.
Is it? Or is it going to be different to even 50-year-old men? Because I feel like 50-year-old men aren't that different to 18-year-old men when it comes to maybe where their eyes wander and the kind of conversations that they have, especially after they've had a few drinks. I don't really think the conversations are that different, if I'm going to be like completely honest. What do you think?
So interesting. I feel like it depends on the groups. I think honestly, like how you socialize, I think has a really big impact on it. I think if you are a big drinker and you love drinking and you like going out and doing drugs and stuff like that, you probably will have similar conversations. I know people that are way older than me that don't talk like that when I'm alone with them, and I know people that are younger than me that don't talk like that either. But I think it comes down to there is obviously like a common thread, because there are the same things that interest men at 18 that interest men at 50. They are going to talk about the same things. An 18-year-old guy and a 50-year-old guy are both going to be like, wow, look at Margot Robbie, she's hot. That's always going to be the case. But I think there's just a degree of maybe like as you mature, there's like dumb things that you wouldn't say when you're older that you do when you're younger.
Okay.
So are all the chats based on women and sexual kind of talk? And how detailed as guys do you go? Because us as women, we're very detailed. Yeah. And women are not shy to ask very, very personal questions.
Each other.
You know what's funny? This is the big myth as well, because like, do you ever watch Friends?
Yes.
You know the episode of Friends when spoiler alert, when Ross kisses Rachel.
Yeah.
And it's like that whole thing where like Rachel goes and tells her friends, and it was amazing, and he started like this, and his hands were here, and they go, oh my god, where did he move his hands? She was like, then he moved his hands over here. And describes this like massive thing, and then it cuts to Ross, and he's like, and then I kissed her, and he's like, tongue, yeah, cool, and that's it. I feel like it's the exact opposite. I feel like guys go into just as much, if not more detail than girls. I really do. Yeah.
So I asked one of my male friends this week, because I knew you guys were coming on, and I said, how detailed and vulgar or explicit does it get, really? And his kind of thought process, or perspective on it, should I say, was, if the woman means something to us,
then not vulgar at all.
Then not so, because it's you then downplay the chat.
Yeah, that's
and
so
you
true.
don't
That's a very good point.
disrespect it and go
so
into
true.
details. But if it was just a one-night stand and a little bit of fun, then they go really explicit and really detailed. Is that true?
That is exactly true.
Okay.
Because again, if it's your girlfriend, you don't want the guys you're with imagining your girlfriend in those
there's stuff that has to stay private.
compromising those situations, and you don't want them to, like, next time you're out at like a date or something, and for them to look across the table and imagine all the stuff that you were telling them or whatever. So you don't want to do that. But yeah, if it's something a bit more casual.
We're talking about teens and sexting, and this becoming almost a thing in order to make sure that you're part of the group, you're not ostracized, and you stay in with your friends or the cool group or whatever it is. And so you almost feel like you're peer pressured into doing it, but you don't fully understand what you're doing and what you're signing up to, because even that part of the brain hasn't fully developed on rationing and rationalizing what's happening. And it's only later, 10, 20 years later, that it comes back and it will haunt you, because if you ever go for a job and that picture is floating around on the internet with your name on it, how are you going to come back from that? Who's going to take you seriously if you want to get a job in any industry?
If it's on the internet, it's forever.
And everything on the phone
forever.
is forever. So you just can never, ever afford to send anyone a photo, even if someone stops talking to you.
No, I agree.
Even if you're cut out from a group, or you're being bullied. Like
but people don't think about it rationally at that age. That's the
don't.
problem. As you say, they get peer pressured into it, and all of a sudden it's sent, and it's too late.
Yeah.
That's and you can't comprehend that amount of time. You can't comprehend forever. But like, if it's on the internet, it's there.
Especially at that age, you think you're invincible as well.
Yeah.
Nothing can possibly go wrong, and that's actually not the case.
It's like, how do we keep our children safe and educate them? Do not send pictures of any sexual content, because you just, again, don't know where it's going to go, what it's going to lead to, and you just don't know those parents on the other side. What I've had certain parents have said, like, our children have been accused of this and that because she's telling one side of the story when obviously she's also instigated it. What do we do? And what
that's a difficult situation to handle.
That's a really hard one.
They play that card that because she's the female, she's more the victim, and she's vulnerable and naive. But when you see the messages from the male side,
she knows what she's doing in the conversation.
She knows exactly what she's doing. Girls are also instigating, sending really naughty pictures, having those sexual
they're sending the picture themselves.
Of course,
because they want to.
Yes, because they want to. But then when they get caught, they blame it all on the
guy.
Well, then you should just don't send on the first place. Like, I don't understand this.
Exactly.
But maybe I'm just ancient. Clearly, I'm just so old.
But then that comes back to what me and you talked about yesterday, of what age you give your child a phone. That's also a big.
What do you guys think? Because you're in your 20s, you're
Yeah.
very young, and you're more in touch probably with the teenagers than we are. I mean, I'm 40 this year. So what you tell me, at what age is a good age for people to be getting smartphones, not flip phones, smartphones.
I mean, I think
not snake phones.
Yeah, no one gets that anymore. That's just me. Yeah, that was just us.
Dude, shout out Snake.
Yeah.
A legendary phone app. I would say I think a phone is a good form of responsibility. I love, like, when I was a kid, getting a mobile phone was a really big deal. I was late to getting a phone. I was like 13. A bunch of my friends had them at like 11 or 12. But again, these were literally just phones. Like, you could text and you could play Snake or whatever, like you said. I feel like I would give them a phone maybe from kind of 12, but I wouldn't give them access to social media until later, because it's a tricky one. Because on the one hand, media is so important, and it is literally what you can't be out of the loop for everything. At the same time, if you're not old enough to know how to use it responsibly, which you won't be if you're 12, you
won't be until you're, I'd say 17 even.
Yeah. So
and I know I'm really late. I'm very late with it. I'm so old-fashioned, obviously.
No, but I agree with you. I feel like, I mean, did you guys see the Social Dilemma?
Yeah.
Yes.
The fact that all of the the ex-directors and stuff from founders of these companies all when asked, like, hey, so do you let your kids use it? They're like, absolutely fucking not.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, that says something. Imagine going into a supermarket and you're like, do you feed your kids with this? And they're like, you would be catching me dead if I fed my kids that. It's like, okay, well, that kind of says something.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't let my kids use social media if I could avoid it. That being said, if you stop a kid from doing something, it's just going to make them want to do it more.
I agree.
So
I think we have to
really
talk
hard.
about what's happening to the brain with the child. I think you just have to, and that's what I explained to Sienna. I showed her 2 different brains, and I said, and there's atrophy that takes place when a child overuses. That means more than 2 hours of mobile phone a day. That's nothing, right? Everyone's on it for hours and hours. So actually the people who, and as parents, we're thinking if we give them the phone, then they are going to understand the digital world and they're going to rule the world. No, what happens is the opposite. The ones who don't have the phone don't have the brain atrophy, and they're more likely to have ambition and grit and resilience in order to take take over rather.
See, I wouldn't have thought that.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
There's a
Because
lot-
that's what, my sort of
yeah.
caveat to that was that actually, if you give your child a phone or smartphone at a younger age, you can then teach them how to use, YouTube or start
They
some
could do that
social media,
anyway.
or actually like create businesses off the back of it.
They could do that anyway.
so many
children-
16-year-olds and 17-year-olds are making a fortune at the moment just
Oh,
off social
100%.
media.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Like, so my kids both have a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
They both
How
are.
old are they?
So my son is 6. My
Okay.
daughter is 10.
Okay.
So I've set up their YouTube channel. I've got the passwords. They're on my Instagram. They've got their own business. So my daughter's we've done 2 product collaborations together. So she understands business. She understands manufacturing, but she doesn't have a mobile phone. So you can do all of this under your mum's protection, her control, learn all the skills you need to learn, but not get brain atrophy. Like, there is a sweet spot.
So it's the
where-
parent's responsibility to be teaching it as the children
Don't
as
give it
opposed
to
the
the
internet.
kid.
Yeah.
They
Do you,
aren't
do you
ready.
give them access to YouTube to watch?
So with YouTube, I'm not a fan because anything can come up on your YouTube. So I'm really strict, and I say no. Actually, I say Netflix and Prime and Amazon, etc. That's fine. That's all been rated. Anyone can upload anything to YouTube, and you don't know. So it could be a very innocent thumbnail, and it could be something awful behind it.
How does that work with the kids at school? Because I'm guessing all the other kids at their school are watching.
They've
YouTube
all got
videos
it. So they've all
the
got
time.
it.
So how do you stop your kid watching YouTube?
So
then?
you have to create a net with the mums. So the mums are all really on the same page, and we're very vocal. I think, like we were saying today, it takes a village to raise kids, and so the mums have to be together on the same page because we're all in control. Once you divide and conquer the parents, the children can do what they want. So the parents have to have a very strong relationship, and we have. So for the last 10 years, we've been really good friends, and now we have kind of like a safety net around the kids, and we're all talking to each other. So say my daughter goes to her friend's house, their mums will be talking to my daughter about what's happening at school, what she's worried about, etc. And then they'll vice versa come over, and we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
We've got a mums group. We're literally discussing the latest data, the latest stats. What we should be doing with our kids. I just don't know if this is the norm. I know that this is what we're doing because we're very proactive.
I definitely don't think it is.
I definitely
Because
think
even
it's
even
either.
you and I were having a conversation the other day about community and actually just raising children with your best friends in a small community where you're relatively self-sufficient.
Yeah.
And as you say, you can actually control what they're viewing and watching and actually have some, I suppose, ownership over it. Whereas if you just let them run wild and you can't deal with other parents, then we've seen the results of that as well.
Yeah.
But that's
Parents
abnormal.
have got
It's
different
abnormal.
perspectives
Yeah.
on giving it.
Yeah.
Some might be like, no, we want to give them the phone, we want to give them the devices,
Yeah.
we want to give them the iPads because it makes us, like we were saying earlier, it gives us a peaceful life, and we feel that it just distracts them because we've got too much on our plate. So not everyone's there's not gonna be a consensus on it all the time.
True.
And that's when it causes problems with the children. Well, my friend's got it and my friend's got a phone.
Yeah.
Why can't I?
This might be controversial, but I do feel like iPads for young kids are kind of like cop-out parenting.
Oh, absolutely.
Like I know I don't have a kid, and people are gonna be like, well, let's see when you have a kid, and then we'll see
No,
how we should.
I agree.
But also fuck you, man. It's like, sorry, they didn't have iPads 30 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
The kids were fine.
Yeah.
I was in the supermarket like a month ago, and I saw this woman who had might have been father. It was a parent, and they had their kid like in one of those like strap things.
Baby Bjorn, yeah.
Yeah, to the back, and it had an iPad like on it.
Really? Seriously?
And the kid's just like this, and the dad's just picking up groceries or whatever, and I'm like, dude,
my
what are you
God.
doing?
Just it
What
doesn't
are you
have a
doing?
meltdown.
Yeah,
in
literally.
Yeah,
the
I mean, like,
and
that
the
is
kid's
insane.
just right into the brain hole, just right in there,
that's
just
so
mush,
sad.
just bright colours and squeaky
It is
noises.
So
It's
bad for
lazy.
the eyeball as well.
crazy,
the
man.
retina.
That's why they're lacking social skills.
Yeah.
When you go, and we were talking about this earlier, if you go to a party or an event or a wedding, all the children on a table are
Yep.
sitting on their iPads
Yep.
or their phones,
Yeah.
and they're not interacting even with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
And you're like, guys, put your phones
I
away.
know.
They confiscate their bands, and suddenly you're just the strict, modern, cool,
Yeah.
but the strict, because we understand it more. We're like,
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
going to be really damaging for you
Yeah.
guys.
Definitely.
Interact with one another, play, laugh,
And also,
run around.
like when I was a kid, the way it worked is we had Game Boy Colors. I'm going to date
Yeah.
myself there. But
Yeah.
we had Game Boy
Yeah,
Colors.
yeah.
We had Game Boys. And it was a thing where, we'd be playing them and then our parents would come through and be like, right, get out. You're going outside, playing
Yeah.
outside. We're like,
Yeah.
no, but I've got to save the game.
Yeah.
My uncle
It's
always
true.
says to me,
Yeah.
he goes, The amount of time we spent in your childhood for you to save the game, the amount of time we wasted saving the game is hours cumulatively. But again, they would kick us out the house and we'd have to like go to the park and play and do whatever. And then when we came back in the evening, then they'd be like, all right, now you can play Game Boy because you've had some sun, you've run around, you burnt off some testosterone, whatever it is. Now you can do it. But now it just feels like that is just, it's all day, every day. And this freemium stuff, like, you know, with Fortnite and a bunch of like the you know, the games where you can, you know, you have to buy more things to like
Roblox.
I miss the days where you buy a game and you have the game.
Everything.
Yeah.
No,
You buy the game, you play the game.
It's
Now as you buy the
constant,
game, you get a third of the game.
Yeah.
And then it's just a never-ending loop of buying more stuff for the game.
Yeah.
I think it's
Parents,
My
Constantly
fingerprint
energy.
is like constant, like
Yeah.
ding, 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 ding.
Yeah.
But no, I agree with you. I think that parents have been really lazy, and I'm one of them, so that's why I can say it.
Good cover.
I did give my kids iPads, and we were on a holiday, and I just thought, oh, do you know, if there's a long trip and a long flight, let's do the iPad. It just makes my life easier. But that's the key. It made my life easier. And I think that at that time everyone was doing it, and I think we didn't really think too much into it, other than maybe eyesight might be affected. We didn't think anything about the brain. And at that point we weren't even thinking about cyberbullying, and we weren't thinking about losing control of the kids. I think when the mobile phone happened and they could communicate with each other, so at that time the iPads, they didn't have games which they could communicate. Now they've got Roblox where they can, you know, strangers can communicate with your child. So, but it's moving so fast that parents, I don't think, are on top of what's happening, and they're giving things as a form of love or as a form of the kids are quiet, then I'm doing a good job, and there's a bit of validation, and I've given you love because I've given you the phone. So I just think we have to retrain ourselves. That's not love. That's laziness.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And I know life is hard, and I know, you know, we're all struggling to earn money, and I know, you know, we don't really have any energy or to give attention at the end of the day.
The first thing should be your children. I mean, that's your priority. That comes above everything.
You know, you say that, and I agree with you. When you have children and you're dealing with the cost of living, and you're scared that you're going to have enough food on the table, then ask me how much water is left in the glass to give energy to anybody. Because at that point, you just don't even, like, you're just so exhausted, there's nothing left to give. So right now you guys are two young guys without any responsibilities. You've got all the testosterone and energy in the world, and you could give all your love and attention to, you know, one person, and you would have plenty left to give to yourself. But when you're in the other boat, which might happen later, it's much harder. And I think people
I can empathise with that.
struggling.
I
can.
For sure.
Yeah.
But I do think, you know, life is hard.
Yeah.
And it's still, I think, as a parent, you have a duty to make your kid a functioning, productive member of society. And I think throwing an iPad in front of his face from 3 years onwards and just letting that do all the parenting for you, I think it's like, and then we wonder why we have like assholes walking around. It's like, because he was raised on an iPad for 17 years. Like, no wonder. Every kid, like, I've got ADHD, and I hate when people, so many people talk about ADHD now, and it really irks me, because I'm like, I don't think half of you actually have ADHD. And it's so, A, overdiagnosed, but B, we have all of these, like, we have so much overstimulation all the time.
Yeah.
And then we wonder why people have trouble concentrating.
Yes.
And this isn't a new thought. And I'm also not a scientist, I'm a comedian, so, you know, don't come for me. Right? I don't read, I tell jokes.
Don't worry, the person
But
just before you was a doctor said exactly what you just said.
There you go. See, I'm a doctor, basically. I'm a doctor by proxy. But, you know, it's like, ADHD it's so difficult. Like, when I was at school, I couldn't concentrate, and I tried. It was not for lack of trying. My dad was like super smart, super academic, and he would sit me down and try and get me to revise. And I remember when revision time would come, all my friends would be like, well, gotta revise now. And I'd be like, you don't seem like you're hating this as much as I'm hating this. And you're like, no one likes revising. I'm like, yeah, you're saying that, but then you're going to the library and sitting for 4 hours and revising. I can't do it. I'm reading one paragraph, and by the time I get to the third line, I've thought of a whole tangent about the second word that I read, and it just won't go in. And so when I meet people that are like on TikTok all day and on YouTube all day, and then they're like, oh yeah, I know I've got ADHD too. I'm like, I don't think you do, man. I don't think you do. And that might be really bad to say, but I do feel like we're massively overdiagnosing everyone. Everyone has something these days. Yeah. And it's like, maybe, you know, if you got a bit more sleep, you got outside a little bit more, you ate a little bit better, you worked your body out a little bit more, got some kinetic energy going, maybe, you know, you'd feel a bit better.
Oh, absolutely. I think that ADHD, the diagnosis has increased, and a big part of that is because of screens, and it is because there's constant stimulation, and us not really being allowed to be bored or allowed to just be at peace. It's just not part of anyone's lifestyle globally. This happened 2 years ago, post-COVID, and now we're all hooked on these screens. And no one seems to have any rules. So it's a little bit like when sugar first came out. You know, we're all gorging on sugar. Everyone's teeth started to rot. And then we thought, hold on, do you know what? Sugar is maybe not the primary source of food. Yeah. Maybe let's eat our food first, and sugar is the last thing that we have as a dessert. That then became an international standard. It made sense. We don't have rules right now when it comes to digital, number of hours, what children should and shouldn't be doing. We don't know what we're doing. It's like sugar just hit the ground running, and everyone's gorging, and they're seeing the what's happening to everybody, but no one really knows what to do. I feel like we're in that kind of situation right now.
No, I agree.
What do you guys think for 20-year-old guys, your friends, do you feel like the conversation has changed in terms of ambition and what people want to do with their lives versus maybe people who are 10, 20 years older than you?
First of all, I feel like it's flattering that you think we're 20, so...
So how old are you? James is 28.
Yeah. Can I just say...
20s!
Yeah, we smashed that.
How old are you?
I'm 28 too.
Okay,
we're literally, he's born like 3 days later than me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Okay, so you're a decade younger than me, so...
Just to clarify.
I
feel like it's definitely changed. The conversation has definitely changed.
What do you think?
I think the conversation that I'm having now with friends is very different, and it's more around where they actually want their life to go and how they're trying to get there. And they're trying to think about how they're going to settle down and what they want to settle down for. Whereas a number of years ago, they weren't thinking about any of that. They just wanted to go out, have fun, drink a lot, and just without care in the world. As you know, you're still young and you can just do whatever you want. Whereas now people are actually... Fuck.
So
like, I'm now thinking about what I want to do with my life, and I don't know, because they've spent also, I think there's an element of like they spent their early 20s going out, getting drunk, not really doing a huge amount other than just having a lot of fun, and now they're at the point where in their mid to late 20s and they're thinking, actually, I'm not quite at the point now in my life where I want to be in order to have the life I want in the next 5 or 10 years. Because they didn't necessarily think about it at a younger age. And I think that's really the conversation that I have with a lot of my friends. I don't know if it's the same for you. But
did you guys both know what direction you wanted to go
No.
into?
Well, me personally, no, not as well. I know for a fact that he didn't either. Because when we were young, we became best mates outside of school pretty much. Because we were in exactly the same spot in life. And we would have been through different journeys to get to that point. But we were both completely lost and didn't know where we wanted to go or what we wanted to do. But we tried a bunch of different things. A lot of it's quite laughable. But we tried like a bunch of different things, all of which were a complete failure. And we got to the point now where we're running this business together. And it feels like we're on the right path. And it's kind of all timed, done quite nicely. And falling into place.
Right?
There was an element of that.
It's about like
there was an element of
rising
that.
Again.
But I do think, to kind of clarify, because I agree with everything James said, but I do feel like I've also noticed in the same way as we get to this age, naturally people do start to think more about family and more about the long term. I've also noticed that some people think about it more than others, and B, I've noticed that there has been a more apparent divergence in the people who are genuinely trying to go above and beyond and make something of themselves, and the people that are more happy to kind of go along with whatever comes their way. And I'm not necessarily saying there's anything wrong with the latter, but I've definitely noticed that I'm more inclined towards people that are actually trying to like build their own thing, because that's just what I gravitate towards.
You will do.
You're aligned more with
right. And so I think, even to my friendship with with Skeeth, it's one of those things where like, for as long as we've been going, he's always wanted to get out of like the corporate world, and I've always wanted to build my own thing anyway. I went the more artistic route, he went the corporate route, but we've kind of ended up at the same place. But again, it's that thing of like, from the beginning, he always had ambition and he always wanted to build something, and so did I. We went about it in completely different ways, but we were always like, so again, a bit about like how we actually met. We were friends at school, but we were barely friends. Not because we didn't like each other, we were just in completely different circles. And we would only hang out when we would go for cigarette breaks, like at school.
We get the naughty boys, by the way.
Definitely.
Absolutely
Guys,
not.
Right? I was the opposite, but anyway.
I was, he wasn't.
Okay.
But
he was a focused nerd geek.
I definitely wasn't that either. No, I flopped.
He didn't get the grades.
Yeah, I was going to say no.
I was a bit of a kind of outsider, not dropout, but I was probably more coloring outside the lines than you were. I think probably fair.
I think that's probably that's the nicest possible way of putting it. But yeah, you were coloring outside the lines. Okay.
Probably. I was the one that was doing music, and I was the one that was like partying a bit more. The creative kind of route. But so we would just kind of occasionally go for cigarettes and stuff. We wouldn't really hang out. And then by pure coincidence, I went into work in the city, which didn't make any sense. I didn't go to uni. I basically bumped into someone on a night out who happened to work in the the city. They thought I could be a salesman, and then next thing you know, I'm working in a finance floor, and it made no fucking sense at all. But I was working in the city.
You didn't need the grades to do that?
No.
You didn't need a degree to do that?
Nope.
So you like anyone to do that?
I am a huge like side tangent. I've never ever sent a CV in my life.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Is it, and I don't really just want to say it, but I'm going to say it.
Yeah, say it.
Is this white male privilege? Because I just don't know if I would see someone in a club and they would give me a banking sales job.
I have one of my best friends is an amazing entrepreneur. I'm not going to name him. He's Ethiopian. He's also never sent a CV in his life. So, because I knew when I said that, the first thought is, oh, well, it's easy if you're a straight white man. And it's like, it's easy. It's not as easy as you think it is to get someone to actually put their neck out for you and pay you a salary when they know nothing about you, when they don't know you. It's not like being white doesn't get someone to sign off.
Not just
like
white, but I think you're
salary.
a good-looking man who's gonna make sales. You know, like there's a psychology with, and there's a fallacy with beauty and truth. Okay, and so the more good-looking you are, the more sales you're gonna make, or the more people are gonna believe you. And so if someone is taking a punt on you, that's what they're taking a punt on, because they don't know what's going on in your brain and they don't understand your work ethic. They don't know anything about this. You know, from meeting someone in a club. What you know is what you can see. Is maybe you're really kind, maybe you bought them a drink, and maybe you spoke really nicely, and you're a good-looking guy. Do you think that's enough to get that job?
The halo effect is documented to work. So the halo effect, for anyone that doesn't know, is basically what you're saying, which is that good-looking people tend to do better in life. They tend to earn more. They tend to have more luck in various different areas of life. So that there is probably an element of that. You know, who's to judge whether I'm good-looking or not? But that could be an element of it. That being said, I have always been extremely direct, extremely outspoken, and very risk inclined. Okay. So if I meet someone on a night out, whatever context I meet them in, if I think there's something about their business that I could add value to, I will literally be the guy in the smoking area going on a whole diatribe for an hour and a half about how you should be marketing like this instead of like that. And I'm an autodidact, so I've always taught myself everything. I just love learning. I'm quite obsessive about learning stuff. So there is obviously definitely a degree of, if you look at me or whatever it might be, but I think what it's come down to is, it's like, if you get your foot in the door and you then perform well, that opens up more doors.
Correct.
And that's literally the same ethos we've used to build this podcast. We've literally taken moonshots to get everyone on. I mean, even you, we didn't know you. I happened to be doing comedy at a corporate event. I saw you. You came up to, and I died on my ass. It was
he was good.
Yeah, but the crowd was not.
We were good.
You were great. But you were great. And you came up to me. You were the one that came up to me and were like, "Oh my god, I just want you to know, I thought you were really funny." And I was like, "Oh, great." And then and then you came on the pod, and it's the same thing with all the other guests we've had. It's just cold email and then referrals and then outreach. Yes. So people would be amazed, A, what you can get when you just ask. Genuinely just ask.
Yeah, I firmly believe that.
And B, I've never subscribed to the idea of like, well, maybe it happened for that guy because he has that. It's like, but that doesn't get you anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, maybe that happened to me because I'm good looking, maybe it happened because I'm white, whatever. But at the end of the day, you're not going to know unless you actually just go up and do it. Yeah. You never know. If you talked, every night when I'm on a night out, I don't go out anymore. But back when I used to go to bars and clubs and that, when I was in like my early 20s, I was always looking for interesting people because I got bored really easily. Yeah. So I would always be looking to talk. I would spend my whole night in the smoking area. And if I wasn't talking to girls, I was talking to guys trying to find out what they did. Yeah. Or girls trying to find out what they did. And just meeting anyone I could to try and find anything interesting. And if I found something that I was interested in, I'm quite a passionate person, as you can probably tell.
No, I'm exactly like you.
So I would do this. So I would just talk and ask loads of questions because I was genuinely interested in what they were doing. And then when they would say, "Oh, you know, there's an opening for this. We need someone that does that." I'm like, "I'll do it. Whatever you need me to do, I'll do it. I'll wear all the different hats. I'll work." So that does go a really long way. And then if you then show up, you can't just be all talk because then you'll be fired in a month and you won't pass probation. You got to deliver. But if people can generally get a good read on enthusiasm and passion. Yeah. You know, and I think that doesn't, of course, you know, for certain traditional roles, send CVs, do X, Y, Z. But if you're just hungry, like our producer at the moment is the perfect example. He was working in a bar. He had 0 editing experience. He didn't even own a laptop, not even a laptop. But I knew he was curious about tech, and he'd messed around with the lighting in the bar he was working at a little bit. And I was like, "Are you interested in tech?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm quite curious about it. I've never done anything though." And I was like, "How would you like to be a producer on a podcast?" And he was like, "I mean, dude, that'd be the dream." And I'm like, "All right, come to mine tomorrow. We'll spend the whole day. I'll teach you editing. I'll teach you structure." And I taught him how to edit videos. I taught him how like scheduling works, how deadlines work, how uploads work, how effects work, how text works, how timing.
In a day?
No. That was like, I trained him over weeks and weeks. Okay. But as in like, he would come around to mine every week whenever he wasn't working, and I would train him how to edit. And now he's an infinitely better editor than me,
Wow.
number one. And number two, he now has an entire skill set as an editor. He has a laptop, he has editing software. He's now fluent in multiple softwares. Any notes I give him, he just runs with. Like in the beginning, the notes for an episode would be like this.
Yeah.
And then the next one would be like this and like
He
this.
just knows what to do.
And now he just makes something and I'm like, yeah, I mean, maybe change the color on that, but other than that, it's fine.
Wow.
And that's a whole skill set that he wouldn't have had. Now, he didn't go to film school. He didn't even go to uni. Oh, no, did he go to uni?
He did go to uni.
He did go to uni, didn't he? But not for anything to do with anything arty. But he was curious and he was hardworking and he was interested. And you just give someone a shot, man, because people gave me a shot.
I think those two things, curiosity and grit, and hard work, are the two things that are really.
Yeah, the fundamental baselines to get anywhere.
Absolutely.
100%.
You've got to graft.
Yeah,
You have to.
100%.
I think it's amazing you gave him that opportunity as well. Because you're right, I was given an opportunity as an editor of a magazine at the age of only 23.
Right.
And it wasn't because, they looked at me. You're right. It was because they saw potential in me that every opportunity I had in some holiday, rather than hanging out with my friends, I went and did work experience at the Daily Mirror or like BBC or Watchdog. And they thought, at 22, she's achieved every summer holiday. She's gone and done work experience in different places. She's got potential.
Sets you
but
apart.
then it's about, it sets you apart. And then it's about then executing and delivering. Yeah. And then actually achieving it. You've got to, they want to see your passion. 100%. Your determination and your graft for things and how you're going to change things. And I used to challenge them on things. But I didn't agree on things, like yourself. I wouldn't be shy to say, actually, I don't agree with that. This is how it should be. And you have to then, sometimes be a little bit outspoken in order to just be able to say, right, I want to make a difference. And I want to make a change. And I think it's great that you did that, because if you don't give opportunities to people and you don't see their talent, and you saw their talent and you thought, okay, they've got potential, you're actually then you just change someone's life right there.
And that feels good.
Yeah, it feels amazing.
It's like you're passing, but again, it's passing it along and living by those values. And I think that's really, really important. Pay it forward. I'd so much rather give someone who's hungry and they approach something creatively as a way to get involved than someone who just follows the thing.
So what inspired you both to launch the Ground Floor podcast then afterwards? Where did that all come from?
That's a good question. Where did that come from? So we were sat in his car. Outside mine, and he was running a comedy podcast with a co-host of his at the time, and I was saying to him, I've been watching what you're doing, and I reckon podcasting, this was after a number of failed businesses, by the way, as I mentioned earlier, right? But we're now at this point where I was like, I think podcasting looks quite cool. What you're doing with your friend looks interesting. I was thinking about maybe starting a podcast myself, and then he said, okay, well, what would you do it about? And I was like, well, at the moment, I'm not entirely sure how I would structure it or what it would be focused on, and we kind of niched it down. He said that you need to have a niche and a purpose and a sort of USP and all this sort of stuff. And we literally formulated a basis for a podcast in his car outside mine on the flippant idea of the two of us meeting up on that day, which wasn't even supposed to happen anyway. Complete coincidence. And then off the back of it, we thought, well, we've always wanted to start our own business and do our own thing. We haven't done it successfully to date. So why don't the two of us just go out and talk to people that have done it and ask them exactly how they did it?
But it's also worth noting as well how it nearly didn't happen as well, because we were in my car and he was, as he said, he was like, I'm thinking of starting a podcast. I want to sit down and talk to people. And like he said, I was like, well, you need something a bit more specific, a bit more of a niche. And I've always been fascinated by origin stories. I love my favorite superhero movies are the ones where it's like, it's the first one where they're making the suit and they're finding, I love that. And I'm fascinated by origin. And so I was like, well, a niche could be like, no one really dives into the specifics of how they did it. And he was like, oh, that's a good point. And I was like, well, look, I'm already doing a podcast, but like, feel free to take the idea, run with it. I don't mind. And he's like, okay, cool. Because he wanted to do it with someone else. And then I was like, yeah, well, you can take my idea. And he's like, great. And then I was like, if you did it, you could do it like this and do it like this. And he's like, okay, great. And I was like, and then we kept talking about it more in that car journey. And then we parked. I was like, if the other guy, for whatever reason, I was like, if for whatever reason he doesn't want to, and I said, by the way, I'm totally happy for you to take my idea and run with it. I don't mind. But if for whatever reason he doesn't want to, we could just do it by ourselves. I'll do it with you. And he was like, okay. And then we talked about it a little bit more. And then by the end of the conversation, he was like, we should just fucking do it together then. It was kind of like when a guy and a girl are talking face, they're like, you'd be a great boyfriend, you'd be a great girlfriend. And I was like, should we just date? It's kind of like that.
I've never had that conversation with anyone, but that's really nice that you have.
So that's how it all came about. We made the right decision, exactly.
But again, it's worth saying, for 9 years, because again...
there's a lot of premise.
That's what I was saying before. I was working in the city. I bumped into him by pure coincidence on a night out. Hadn't seen him since school. I was like, oh my God, Ski. Oh my God, Ollie. We should definitely grab a pint. Both thinking it's never going to happen. Like, never going to happen. And then we met up like the next week. And that was when we were 19. And we're now, 28?
Yeah.
I've seen him on average at least once a week for 9 years now.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's every week meeting up, either going for a pint or a coffee or a walk and just being like, what we
moaning
were
about how
moaning about
like
how
how much of a shit time we were having.
Do you
at
know
that
what?
point.
You're so lucky to have that, because I don't think a lot of guys have this.
It's so important, and I actually can't stress that enough.
Why
to
do
have,
guys
to have
not
someone.
have this? Like, what, you know, for us to talk is just so like natural. We will tell you everything, even if you don't want to hear it. But for boys and men, I don't know at what age this happens, and I'm just watching my son and thinking, at what point are you going to stop talking to mummy and telling me everything? But having a best friend.
I feel like it happens naturally, to be honest. And there is an element of luck involved with it. There was with us, but there is an element of trying to force that or go out and proactively find that relationship as well.
Okay.
Because if he didn't have it with me and I didn't have it with him, we're both the type of personality where we need that other person to bounce ideas off of or lean on, and when times are
Everybody
tough.
does it. I don't know anyone who doesn't.
Yeah,
need
of course. But I feel like you really need to proactively search and vet someone thoroughly to really 100% have that faith in them.
What are you going to look for?
Hard.
Is it ego? Is it to make sure they don't have ego? They're not going to throw it back in your face. Like you make a mistake and they laugh at you. Like
trust is definitely a huge factor.
Trust is huge, but also I think similar values.
Yeah.
Because what's funny is like on paper we are genuinely diametrically opposed. We are so different in so many ways. He and I. He's very, very organized. He's very like down the line, and I'm very a bit all over the place. But in terms of overall values, in terms of like hard work, getting things done, discipline, wanting to make a better life for yourself, X, Y, Z, we are so the same.
Right.
Like completely aligned. And that trust is so important because, I mean, we say this all the time, but I mean like anything that I need done, I know that he'll get done. And anything he needs done, I know that he knows that I'll get done. And we both know exactly where we slot. And that's the beauty of it, because it's like, I'm this, he's that, and it just works.
This is a perfect marriage, by the way.
Thank you.
This is honestly what the perfect marriage looks like. Is where you say something and it gets done, and you say something and it gets done, and there's no nagging.
Yeah.
There's no having to repeat yourself. You have enough credibility that once you've said it once, it means something. It's important and it has to get done. But I think often this doesn't happen in marriage, where one is constantly having to repeat themselves, and the other one's thinking, I don't really value what you're saying, and I've got other things that I need to get on with. But what you have here is the trust and this mutual respect. This is what perfect marriage does look like. Just to let everyone know, guys.
You heard it here first.
Are they not together?
They're not together.
They're both single, right?
I've got a girlfriend.
You got
Just to clarify.
I am recently single, yes.
Sorry.
But no, it's fine. But I would say, pick your partner carefully, in business and in business and in life. And
we can resonate with that as well, because even though we're so different from our fields and our backgrounds, when we know we can rely on each other. We speak to each other every day, whether it's through WhatsApp or whether it's through working together, and we see each other at least once or twice a week as well. But we know, and I know I could fully trust her, and I've been burnt, and she knows. And I was very she could see my guard was up. I was scared. I was like, oh my God, everyone has literally used me for what they can and take advantage of me. And she's known that because I've confided in her so many times as a friend. But I know I can trust her, and I know she will always be there for me, both personally and professionally. And you have to, because the only way you're going to make something successful, like a podcast, is if you're aligned and you have similar values, like you said. Even though you could be completely too different, and because I'm the creative and I'm a little bit overplayed.
I think you need to be different. You can't come at it with the same personalities. If you two were completely identical in your personality type, it just wouldn't work. You would just clash. You need opposites attract for a reason.
Yeah,
totally. And also you need to be able to have uncomfortable conversations, and that can be really hard. I don't particularly like conflict. He doesn't particularly like conflict. But we've both had times.
I don't know about that. I don't know. I quite like conflict sometimes. Yeah. Okay, fine.
He probably is more comfortable with conflict than I am. But we have both had to have situations where we've had to pull the other one up and being like, I didn't fucking like that, or that wasn't good, or and what's nice, I think, is that in both, I can think of one example for each of us, and in both examples, both of us were like, just drop the ego, and we're like, no, you're absolutely right, my bad.
And it's just that vocal and open about it, though. And that's true.
Yeah, and then you become 10 times closer.
100%. So this is what I'm seeing with men. So I look at my husband, I look at his friends. My husband is he doesn't have a huge ego. He's a lot of empathy. He's does a lot of self-development, and he helps me actually. He's like my coach in life. Okay. So he's better than me in everything. But when I see the guys, talking to each other, the thing that I notice is they tend to take each other down, and it's almost like a cheap laugh that they tend to have at each other's expense. And I've never seen this happen with women. This does not happen to women. Yeah. Men, and I actually asked someone the other day, one was had a newspaper article out, and he was doing very well, and I was complimenting him. The other male standing there, took the mick out of the picture and said, "Oh, you didn't look very good though, did you?" And I said to him, I said, "Does that hurt your feelings? Someone saying that to you? Because that would really hurt me if someone said that to me." And I go, "Oh, is this a man thing? Is this just this is the kind of chat you had?" He goes, "No, it does affect me, but there's nothing you can say, because if you say something..."
Your husband said that?
No, not my husband. This is somebody else, another male in the group. I was just watching how men are with each other. And this having cheap jokes at each other's expense, I don't think they understand it really does hurt that person, but no one's allowed to say anything because you've almost been raised that this is how it's always been since childhood.
Yeah, that's an interesting point.
What do you think?
Yeah.
Can I tackle this?
Yeah, okay.
First?
Okay, go ahead.
Because I want to hear what you say. But okay, I've got a bit of a biased opinion because I'm a comedian. And part of that is like, that's a big part of the culture, like ripping each other. And that's a really big thing. It's also something that me and my friends have always done. Yeah. Especially, I mean, me and him, it's relentless.
So you rip him, he rips you?
Relentlessly.
Okay.
Relentlessly. However, I think there's a really important distinction. So I think the first thing is why does it happen? And it is a male bonding technique. Okay. It's a way of saying like, if I like you, I'll rip into you, because it's basically a way of men saying, I feel comfortable with you enough that I can make a joke with you and you won't get like scared or butthurt. You can laugh at yourself and I can laugh at myself, and that's a way of saying like, you're all right. Okay. If I don't joke with you, that means I don't feel comfortable around you. I feel like you could run to teacher essentially. If I joke, because that does happen. You make a joke to someone and then they don't, they get offended or they get triggered and whatever. So, to be able to like have a joke with someone at their expense, and then for them to have a joke at your expense, and to show that it's like, okay, we both, we understand each other. It's okay. It's a bonding thing. Okay. But that being said, there is a line of, you don't want to put yourself down too much in public, and there's things you joke about, things you don't joke about. Okay. But also B, like, I would never joke about with him, for example, about like his competence as a businessman, for example, because that there's no point. It's personal, but it's also, there's no benefit to me in knocking his confidence in something that I want him to feel confident in. If he comes in wearing a t-shirt that looks stupid, I'll be like, you look like an idiot. And I won't feel bad. And vice versa, if I come in and my hair's all over the place, he's like, mate, put a fucking bun in your hair. It's whatever. So there is that, but it's about the thing of like, we don't say things that will make the other one genuinely be like, oh man, that really hurt me or whatever. And I think part of evolving a friendship is where those lines are. Would you agree?
I would agree with that to an extent, because I feel like when I was younger, I got a lot. Of shit from a lot of people, and it definitely affected my confidence. Like it would. Severely. Of course it would. And I was actually quite very, I'm not going to say depressed, but very just like fed up for a number of years because I would just get a lot of shit from various people. And I do feel like it does have to come from you personally to actually make yourself feel better and build your own personal confidence. And then the stuff that you hear from other people, which, as he's right, it is a bonding technique, but it bounces off you a lot more easily. And especially with those very, very close circle of friends, it is just a way of communicating one another, and it's a way of building rapport with each other and having a laugh. And
on that, by the way, I do also think it does make a massive difference who's doing it. Okay. Like, we've had a situation before where someone came in to a situation that he was in and was joking about things that we normally joke about with our friends, and they just came in and joined in, and we didn't know them. And it's a thing of immediately. And again, we were just joking about it. And then immediately that happens, and we all just immediately pivot and go, who the fuck are you?
Literally.
Or gave you the right in their place.
Who is this guy?
Yeah, it's like we're fiercely protected. It's like, we can do it because we know it's in good faith. And it's about it being in good faith. There's things that we can joke about because he knows that I love him. And also I know what his pain points are, and he knows what my pain points are. So he won't make jokes that he knows would make me annoyed or upset, and vice versa to him. Right. So there is like a trust element there as well.
Fair.
Okay. If we flip it on the other side, would you say when you are going to have banter with a woman, because women can't sometimes take, as you have obviously pointed out, certain jokes, and they don't realise when you're being serious or when you're being like, when you're just having fun and laugh with them, when do you know when's that boundary of that line that you just don't overstep the mark? Because some women will be on the same wavelength with you and you will be able to banter with you, and some will just be like, I can't believe you just said that.
Some of them, in my experience, and this is in my experience, generally speaking,
can't believe you're going to say this.
I can't believe I'm about to say this. There you go. You've got your trailer.
You can chop that up. There you go.
I'm going to choose my words extremely carefully here. In my experience, even the women that can, quote unquote, take a joke, or, they're just one of the guys or whatever, even them, there is usually a limit. And it's nowhere near the limit of where the guys are. And I don't, blame them for that. I don't have any sort of negative feeling towards them for that. But I have definitely noticed, like, I don't know any guys that, when they're around female friends will joke or take the piss to the same extent they do with the other men. Even if you ask them in front of the girl, they'd be like, that's not true, you joke with me, right? And they'll be like, yeah, no, I joke with her just the same as I joke, you know. But you're like, okay, bro, you don't know. It's like, and that's fine, but, you know, it doesn't really, it's just a different type of interaction, because there is more of a tendency to, if you either don't joke with them about certain things, and they're like, why don't you joke with me the way you joke with me? Okay, and then you do it, and they're like, "That's just really hurtful. I don't understand why you would. Why did you say that?"
It's so confused.
It's a rock and a hard place situation.
Emotions, right? They put their emotions into it.
Yeah.
I do agree with that as well.
Me
I do agree with that. Yeah, because I have the same
too.
relationship with my girlfriend.
Yeah.
I have a very different relationship with him than I do with my girlfriend, but I do joke with her.
Do you?
Funnily enough, up to a
Jealousy
point.
there now.
Yeah, up to a point, and then
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, okay, then you can't cross that line. But the barrier.
So where's
for
the
someone
line
like him,
with a woman?
It varies
Okay.
from person to person.
You've got to assess it, right?
Yeah, of course you do.
Because
It's all to do with
what you
tolerance
handle.
and like EQ and
Yeah.
all this kind of stuff. There is no fine line between.
Generally,
between
appearance is a line.
Yeah.
Generally, you know, you can joke
Yeah.
about a guy's appearance. You can't really joke about a girl's appearance that much.
Yeah.
Maybe the light things, but like you can't push that to the same
Do you
extent.
think because the value of a female is seen in how she appears more than for a male? Do you think that that's
Yes.
more important? And so that,
you guys are under more pressure? Than
yeah,
than men are.
basically when
Yeah.
it comes, which is really awful and horrible to say and think, but
do you think that will ever change though?
I've been thinking this, and from what I can see, there's a proxy for competence that's based on what you look like, how you're dressed, how you carry yourself, whether you walk with confidence, and either whether you tie your hair up or you do your hair or you don't do your hair, you are sending a message with everything that you do. And how are people going? People have to make snap judgments when they walk into a room, just and not because they want to. That's just your ancient brain. You do that because you need to know who friend and foe is. So we can't ever change that. We can never change that. We have to make snap judgments when we walk into a room to see, is someone going to harm me or someone going to be my friend? And so in that thin slicing, you've made a decision about who the most powerful person in the room is based on how much space they're taking up, or how people are looking at that person, and how their hair is, and have they made an effort? Do they look nice and neat and presented or not? And so you are making all these decisions based on how someone looks. And when you say looks don't matter, unfortunately you can't see someone's heart, and you can only see what you can see.
But do you think, even probing even deeper into that, because I agree, but do you think that I don't necessarily know if men are even obviously those things aren't consciously thought out, they're things that we assess, but I think it's more a thing where men are just generally more visual, and I think they're just more drawn to the outward appearance perhaps than women are. I think women are more in this kind of like, you're better than us in this way, like you give us more of a chance. Like I've seen girls, you know, with guys where maybe the guy's not the best looking, but they're like, oh, he's really funny, or like, you know, he's, you know, or he's maybe rich, he's got a good job, or he's driven, whatever it might be. Guys generally speaking will I've seen from what my experience is, you know, talking to guys about this kind of stuff, they will generally vet. I thought of a great analogy for it recently, which I think is it's kind of like a door, and women, it's sort of like a keyhole where the guy will kind of walk through the door, and then once he's sort of been shown to vet something, then she will decide if he lets him in or out of the palace or not. Whereas with men, it's more the woman goes up to the door, and then they open the eye hole, look down, and if they pass that first barrier, then they let them in to see the rest of it.
So it's a barrier to entry.
I think looks is a barrier to entry for women.
For women, like men for women, basically.
Yeah, for
Men
women when it comes to finding men.
And I think maybe a part of that is because if you're a male looking
Not saying it's right or wrong,
no,
by the way.
but if
Just
you're
that is what I
if you're
think it
looking
is.
for fertility, then you are looking at genes that you want
Yeah.
to pass your genes through. So then that would make sense in terms of evolution. But for a female's perspective, kindness is probably one of the most important things. Kindness and being funny, and when times are hard, the man is not going to beat you, that the man is going to get through it with you. These things are more important than looks. So I would even agree with you on that, because we have to think about our personal safety. You guys don't have to think about your personal safety in the same way. So I think we just have different criteria as to what we're looking for, you know, to have a safe future. So how have things changed post-COVID for those in their 20s when it comes to jobs versus other ways of earning money?
I think generally speaking, people who were always resourceful and entrepreneurial have more avenues to do so. And I think maybe people that wouldn't have initially explored an entrepreneurial avenue are now exploring those avenues through things that we've seen, you know, like TikTok and social media. But generally speaking, the people that are doing things are doing more things and the people that aren't doing things are doing less things. I haven't seen too much of a divergence in people who I know that are genuinely high productive A-type people that are going out of their way to try and overperform, and people who are kind of just coasting along with the average. I've seen pretty much it's been the same. It's just those people have done even more and those people have continued to do the same.
So they're diverging.
Yeah.
So then do you think we're going to have a pay gap that's going to just increase? Like, do you think the classes are going to get further apart?
I do.
So then what's happening with those who maybe don't have the same ambition and now have actually just had 20 years of or 10 years being on social media and really don't have any?
And I feel like that's tricky because that's just the way the game's played. Unfortunately, that is just life. It's just one big competition with one another, and you have to do what you need to do to get ahead.
Yeah.
And I think that can sound, by the way, like, hey bro, you just got to grind harder or whatever. And that's not what he's saying, and I don't think that's what it is. But there is an element of things are way more competitive now. They just, with new technology, especially with AI on the way, things are way more competitive. And is it fair? Is it right? I don't know. I'm not a philosopher. I'm not here to say that. But I do know that I'm scared about not being able to provide for the family that I would like to have. And I know that he is too. Yeah. And so it's we're working extra hard to add some value to people with both our business and our podcast, because we also run our own agency. So we produce podcasts like this at our studio for businesses that are looking to use podcasting for marketing. So we're constantly iterating and doing our own things because it is more competitive. And if you don't keep up, you might get left behind, and it might get kind of scary. And I could be wrong, but I'm definitely.
I think you're right. I think it's actually even more scary than what you're saying, because not only is it more competitive, now the cost of living is exponentially more. So in my time, 20 years ago, if I wanted to buy a flat, it would cost £250,000, £300,000. Now that same property is going for £600,000, £700,000.
And wages haven't increased.
And wages haven't increased. A doctor was earning 10 years ago £100,000 a year, and they're still earning £100,000 a year. And so if your property has gone up, has doubled in that time, but your salary is the same, then you're much worse off than you were before. You can't actually do that job and have the same lifestyle that maybe your parents had doing that job. So it's more than just even being competitive. It's also the cost of everything has gone up exponentially. So I think we might even end up in a situation where we don't have as many families, we don't have as many people getting married and having children, because it's just impossible. It's impossible on if you're earning below.
The financial obligation of having a family is huge.
And also on that note, I would say, I can only speak for men, because I'm a guy, but for young men that are listening, if you're in your late teens, early 20s, and you do consider yourself to be somewhat, above average in terms of ambition, find guys around you. It doesn't have to cost anything. Make a fucking WhatsApp group and go around to a different person's house each week or once a month, have a sit down and just talk about ideas. Talk about what you're doing, what's your skill set, can we do something together? Network is so important, and who you know and who you get to know, and those communities that you build will have untold value as you get older. And I've made a massive, a really conscious effort to cultivate a network of people who are genuinely really smart, really capable, really highly performing in different areas. And you can do that from as young as 18. The kids that kid in your class that's built a TikTok page, get to know him, ask him how he did it. Maybe this guy knows how to code. Maybe this guy knows design. Just get together. Maybe you can make an app. It doesn't have to be that, but just get people like you in a room and ideas will come.
And persist at it as well.
Yeah. It's been
because a lot of your ideas will be crap when you first come up.
We had
they're not going to go anywhere.
And it's been 9 years. 9.
And we're now just getting started.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Nearly a
I
decade.
love that you said that, honestly, because I've never heard of boys talking about this as a tribe. So from the female perspective, I completely agree. I would say say to my daughter, surround yourself by people you want to aspire to be. I would say that to my daughter, but I would never know what to say to my son. But as you're completely right. Same applies.
We need brotherhood. You need tribe as a man. We grew up in tribes. We need that tribalism. You need guys around you that share, because it's not enough now, back, hundreds or however many years ago, it's not enough to do it, racially or by religion or whatever. It's values now. It's who are the guys around you that share the same values as you, that have the same ambition as you, that want to go to the same places you, have the same lifestyle values as you, and build something together. You'll get there 10 times faster.
Absolutely. 100%. And do you think the younger generation are now, because the hustle culture is a trend now, but it's also something that we're seeing grow, where everyone wants to make so much money very quickly, especially younger generation. They don't want to work. They want to work smart. They got that lazy attitude, which we were saying. They want to retire. They want to make their millions, and they think social media platforms and living this life that they're dressed and decked in designer clothes, and they like taking pictures, on private jets, even though they don't even own a private jet.
I saw that.
Do you think there's just so much pressure
it's
there?
Just pathetic. But anyway.
What was this?
So there's literally there's someone's actually built a business off a model private jet.
I've seen
that. And you go in and get photos done to make it look like you're in a jet.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think there's a great quote I heard the other day, which is, I think it's Bill Gates, and he said, most people overestimate what they can do in a year, but underestimate what they can do in 10 years.
Absolutely.
And I think there's yes, there is room for smart work, but this whole smart work thing, it's like you still got to work hard, dude.
For a long period of time as well. It's not quick money. It's just not going to come unless you're in the lucky people that got a crypto pump, whenever it was. You're just not. It's not going to happen now. It's just going to take time, effort, and a lot of hard work.
But do you think that the younger generation can multitask and do a variety of different?
I think
things
they should focus. I think they should focus on one thing at a time and try and make that thing work.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, the likelihood is it won't. So focus on that one thing rather than half-ass it. Yeah.
The biggest mistake I made in my early 20s was doing too many things at once. I was doing music, I was doing acting, I was doing this, I was doing that, I was doing consulting, I was doing everything. I was doing social media, whatever. I was doing a million things, and none of them really took off.
Yeah.
And it's only now that I've streamlined. I have, our agency and the podcast, and then I do social media management, and that's it.
But are you glad you did it that way? So I remember you saying in your early 20s, people were, sort of like having loads of fun, and then they get to their late 20s and thinking, oh my God, now what am I going to do? But on the flip side, I've heard that if you try lots of different things, only then you can streamline. So
but you have to try them properly. Because what I was doing is I would try something for a couple of months, get a bit bored, and then try something else alongside that other thing, and then none of them really do anything. Well. Yeah, and I think a lot of guys are, but it's like, it's try a lot of things, yes, iterate, yes. If you're doing something for 3 months and you genuinely hate it and are seeing no value from it at all, and you don't think you're going to want to do it, then fine. You have to have an honest conversation with yourself. Am I quitting because I'm just quitting, or am I quitting because genuinely I don't think this is a good fit for me? And only you can answer that question. But if you are trying something, try it for 6 months. Give it 6 months. If you put your name to something, give it 6 months of doing it every single day, and then see where you are at the end of it.
Trial and test it, right? You're never going to know and even if you fall, you keep going, rise again, and then do it differently.
And the other thing I would say as well is find a mentor in that area. So if there's something that you want to do, that you want to try for 6 months, find someone who's been there, done it, and made a success of it, and reach out to them and ask them if they can give you some advice and guidance, because you'd be amazed how many people will say yes.
Do you think the next generation has the kind of ability to stick at one thing for 10, 20 years?
100%.
You think they do?
I think it's incredibly naive if they think they don't.
No. Do you think, as in the ones who have been on social media and who really don't seem to have much ambition, which is what I'm seeing and is making me nervous, do you think they have the grit and resilience to stick with one thing for 10, 20 years?
No, because they're coddled.
That's what I'm nervous about.
They're way too coddled. I saw an article the other day where it was like, I can't remember where it was. It might have been BuzzFeed or Huffington Post or something like that. But it was like, men stop working out. It's toxic. It's like, what? Like, I know that's an extreme example, but like there is an element of like, we are being really coddled. And I don't think it's good. And yes, we can talk about, I had an immigrant father, Eastern European, it's like we can talk about the pros and cons of, could he have given me a few more hugs here and there? But at the end of the day, like, he got shit done, and I'm now like building my own thing, and you need a bit of a thick skin. And I think that kind of goes back to the kind of ribbing thing from earlier. It's like, yes, you don't want to be mean to the people you're talking to, but also you need to thicken up a bit, man.
That's true.
You can't, if the slightest joke is going to make you feel hurt and insecure inside, grow up.
Plus rejection. There's going to be so much rejection that you're just going to have to eat a lot of shit before it actually becomes good.
Yeah.
That's just the truth. And maybe you're right. There is an element of people just don't have thick enough skin for it, which, fine. If that's not for you, then find something that does work for you and focus on that. It's not, building your own business isn't for everyone, right? If you want to be successful and have a lot of money, but you don't want to build your own business, then find a startup that you could join, get equity in, and be number 3 at the the next Facebook. I mean, that's the way to do it. It's not everyone should be starting their business.
Oh, if you're not an entrepreneur, you're a loser.
Yeah,
not
at all.
The vibe.
No, not at all. There's a lot to be said for someone that actually has a very good life working for someone else. In any way, that's actually much better in a lot of cases.
But just don't be the guy working for someone else, but kind of just coasting and not really aiming higher. Like, amazing to be the guy at number 3 at the next Facebook, but then be the guy at number 3 at the next Facebook. Don't just be the guy that's clocking in, clocking out for the same salary, kind of hoping the boss doesn't notice you, because then you're going to fall behind and it's going to suck for you.
Especially with an AI wave.
Oh, dude, AI.
That's going to be. That's a whole different topic, but that is really going to be.
We'll have to get you back on there to discuss AI for sure.
And maybe we'll talk about dating next time.
Yes, we will. I just want to roast you.
She's got a list of things.
I know.
That's a whole
I
episode.
can't believe we've run out of time. It's been amazing having you here. Thank you so much. And where can everyone watch your podcast?
So you can find the Ground Floor podcast on all digital streaming platforms, but especially on YouTube because we are video. And you can find me on social media at Is That Posh, and you can find him on social media
James Keith.
James Keith. But go on YouTube, type in the Ground Floor podcast, subscribe. We sit down with successful people every single week, and we literally ask them exactly how they did it. No faff, no bullshit. We just asked them what their story was and how they did it.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, I was on it, and so
and Benita was on it. Yeah,
I gave away way too much, but it's fine.
Yeah, she did.
She had the most amount of views and likes, so I saw that.
She's done very well.
Brilliant.
She's done very well.
She's done great.
Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget, we are in the comment section for 1 hour at the launch of every YouTube video. So when you subscribe, make sure you hit that notification bell.
And also follow us on our Instagram page, Taboo Table Talks. Thank you for tuning in. See you till next time.
Take care. Bye.